From Halifax to the four Maritime provinces, Stil James founders share how timeless design, regional sensibilities, and entrepreneurial grit shape their work, and a new cabinetry brand, Lorraine, to boot. There's a kind of quiet confidence in the design work coming out of Canada's Maritime provinces, projects that don't chase trends, but instead reflect the rhythm of life shaped by weather, culture, and community. In this episode of the show, I'm speaking with the founders of Stil James, a Halifax-based design studio that embodies the spirit of regional purpose. Their approach blends design, restraint, and deep practicality. And their new cabinetry brand, Lorraine, takes that philosophy even further. Natalie and Victoria of Stil James and I explore how two designers are navigating generational shifts in lifestyle, climate changes, and the conservative market while building a business rooted in curiosity, learning, and partnership, from kitchens and mudrooms to cabinetry and color palettes. They reveal what it means to design for both function and future in the Atlantic Canada. We talked about how the pandemic reshaped design thinking in the Maritimes, how open spaces replaced formal dining rooms, and how designers are reimagining older homes to suit how families actually live. The team at Stil James described their region's unique relationship with design, working 10 to 15 years behind the trends. Interesting. And not as a limitation, but as an advantage that allows for timelessness and reflection. They draw more inspiration from Europe than North America, taking cues from craftsmanship, heritage, and texture rather than fleeting style cycles. Again, it's pretty interesting, right? Our conversation moved to climate resiliency, a constant design driver in Atlantic Canada, where homes must withstand everything from coastal winds to heavy snowfall. Mudrooms become essential transitional spaces designed for the reality of shifting weather and active family life. Clients are increasingly focused on systems, materials, and suitable practices that include sustainability to ensure their homes can accept and adapt with the climate. We also discuss lifelong learning, how that has become central to the Stil James ethos. They encourage their team to attend design shows, seek global perspectives through digital tools, and value soft skills, resilience, empathy, curiosity. Where have you heard that before? It's just as highly valued as formal training. We closed with a conversation about color and timelessness, how they resist seasonal trend reports and instead design for relevance over the next decade or more. They balance enduring finishes with accents that allow for evolution and personal expression. Loved it. I think you will too, and you're going to hear all of it right after this. At the highest level of design, the absolute best specifying designers, architects, landscape designers are all highly focused on the technology and performance of products and materials today. You have to, because the products you specify for your projects have to perform and they have to last. That's one of the reasons why I am so proud to be working with TimberTech. Their focus on the technical renaissance of synthetic decking is literally changing the conversation about innovation and performance. It pulls focus on three priorities homeowners have and expect from the products their designers and architects specify for their luxury projects. 1, aesthetics must match the overall design and fit visually. 2, durability and maintenance. I've told you about my board flipping stories from my own wood decks. Clients not only want beauty, but they want ease of use, and they want it to last for decades. 3, sustainably made. Clients are more conscious of the environment now, and they want the same of their materials. TimberTech hits each one of these elements with a product that not only meets expectations, they exceed them. TimberTech makes a synthetic decking that looks just like wood, color and embossed wood grain for a natural appearance. Their composite decking is technologically superior, as it has been created to last for decades, and it's manufactured with up to 85% recycled material. Their advanced PVC, vintage, and landmark collections have a Class A flame spread rating, making these products an amazing choice for wildfire-prone areas, which unfortunately continues to grow on the risk map. Check the show notes for more information about this and to find the nearest showroom or lumberyard where you can find TimberTech, or you can check them out directly, timbertech.com. It's funny, too, because since the proliferation of podcasts, we're kind of used to having, or Zoom in any case, we're kind of used to having our meetings watched by others at this point, are we not?
Oh yeah, we're not worried about that. We're worried about noise transfer into your audio. That's all.
It's funny. Well, that's the other part of it is, you know, when I started this show, it's so funny. It's funny how the business changes, right? When I started the show in 2013, like first of all, everything was live. And second of all, I would go out and I'm embarrassed at this point. I would shush people. I would give people the dirty eye, like, be quiet. Can't you see
Yeah.
I'm recording? This is very important what we're doing. And then, and then over the years, I think the pandemic pretty much cured this, but with people's kids walking into meetings and dogs barking and lawnmowers and garbage trucks, it's like, do we ever have a pristine recording environment anymore?
Yeah.
Right. It kind of like pulled the shade back and everyone's
A
like,
little
we know
bit.
how we all live.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. But that also ties in to what you do. And it's really interesting. And doing just a modicum of research on you and the firm and what you do. Function seems overtly put out in front of what you do.
Yeah.
Would you say that's your USP? Would you say that you kind of built the firm around that bedrock? Where does that come from?
Yeah, I think that comes from a direct result of Victoria having 3 children and me having 3 children. So there's between the two of us, you're looking at 6 kids under the age of 8, and two hurricane husbands. So like stuff's got to work.
What's a hurricane husband?
You come live with me, Josh, for a couple weeks. I'll show you.
You know what's funny? I don't think I could take that. And it's interesting too, kind of like dovetailing into the idea. But uh, it's not new. I'm an empty nester.
Oh,
And
congrats.
what's really
That sounds nice.
what's interesting though is the manner in which my home's functionality completely changed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of the point that I kind of wanted to drill down on with a little bit. Kids and hurricane husbands notwithstanding, this idea that we can make things pretty and you can see them on a page of a trade pub, design magazine, Instagram, social media all day long, right? But unless you're in it and you're working with it, you don't really understand the functionality. So, and that's kind of why I want to drill down a little bit. So 2 designers, 2 hurricane husbands, 6 kids under 8. Your homes have to be designed a certain way. What's your process? Onboarding new clients, new build or a refresh or a complete remodel? Talking about, let's have that conversation about functionality, where that comes from, and how you import that into the work itself.
So I think for us, a big piece of what we do is we don't design the same way for every client. We really try and understand the client before the design comes. And that really goes back to function and kind of to your point about what a large family needs is going to be different than, what 2 newlyweds need, which we also work with people downsizing on the back end. Like everybody has different priorities. And so, for example, myself, we actually built a house before our first son was born because we love to host and it was hugely open concept and we loved it. And the second the baby came and the dog barked constantly and the baby screamed and all the noise bounced off the wall, we were out within a year. So it's really understanding your client and how they use that space. And I guess to kind of build off how we do it on the design side, we actually just launched a millwork company in particular for this reason too. So now we are selling and building our own millwork in a sense of how does your kitchen function? Do you eat Uber Eats every night and you just need a space for everyone to gather and host? Do you love to cook and having like beautiful appliances? So this whole process, I guess day one, our process to understand function is to understand the way people live.
And I want to talk about Lauren too, as well. But I wanted to start with kind of a couple other things and the need, like, it's funny because you can tell clients all day long, it's like, look, when your kids get older, things are going to change for you. But trying to tell yourself as a designer, it's almost like sometimes I feel like institutional knowledge gets in the way of individual progress professionally. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And because we've entered this renaissance of design where things have been changing constantly since 2020. I mean, there's been a constant flux since March of 2020 in how we live, how we design, how we specify, how we order, how we receive, everything has changed. What has fundamentally changed, aside from the addition of Lauren, the cabinetry company, and I want to talk to you about that too, but because I see a whole litany of other issues that go along with that, probably just since you've launched, and I'm dying to get your take on that. But as far as the design itself, and you're in Nova Scotia, right? So you're somewhat removed from the design superstar cities, Montreal, Ontario, New York, LA, San Francisco. I'm interested too, if that kind of pulls you away from this constant desire from a client standpoint to be on trend and on point. And if Arc Digest says you have to do it, well, are they asking you to do it, or do your clients live differently because of where you are?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think, one of the secret sauces that we have here in Nova Scotia is that the Maritimes, so the four provinces here, like typically we're always about 10 years, 10 to 15 years behind in terms of the trends. That's anything. That's fashion, that's home design, architecture. And what we try to do is make sure that we're sprinkling in this inspiration from places around the world, really, that are up to date. Typically, we actually first look at Europe. We don't really look at the US. We don't really look at Toronto. We go to the European because there is this same feel in a lot of the maritime provinces that has this like outdoors earthiness. It's really family oriented. There's a lot of things that we find similar in terms of function when we look at European design. But as we see, we're talking about like a shift here in the generations and how we design now, maybe versus how people designed 20 years ago, is like, we're done with the formal dining room. We're done with the formal seating area at the front of the house. And yet a lot of the homes we walk into still have those spaces allocated. So that's a challenge for us to really kind of dig in with the client who's like, well, the dining room is at the front of the house and the dining room has always been here. Don't you think it should be here? And the more we get to know them and really start to explain to them, like, yes, it was, but you're telling me that you don't use a formal dining room. You sit with your kids off the kitchen every single night. And when you host, you're kind of in and out of the kitchen. So let's do that. And like that's been a real shift, I think, designing in Halifax, where this younger generation is actually a little more excited about designing spaces in older homes that really fit kind of the function of their lives.
And then you have to retrofit those older homes. And it's funny, I bring this up because I have firsthand knowledge during the pandemic, moving from Los Angeles beach coastal city in LA to literally the middle of the US in Tulsa, Oklahoma, moving into a 1920s original four-square colonial revival, and understanding now and not having really an understanding of what it means to kind of retrofit lifestyle in a modern environment.
Mhm.
And I think that that's affecting you as well. I'm curious though, is your client base primarily in Halifax, or do you expand out?
Our client base would primarily be in the four maritime provinces. So when the firm started, I would say, 95% of our clients were local. But if you looked at our book of business today, probably 60% would be in Nova Scotia and the other 40% would be in the four maritime provinces.
Okay, excellent. In the times, just in the time since you've started your firm, climate change, climate change affected issues, and especially where you are. So you've got harder rain, you've got more rain, you've got rising sea levels, you've got more wind events. How are you addressing those issues as part of the design? Because it's almost like materials have to be hardened, systems have to be hardened. There has to be a certain level of protection established for certain things that maybe you didn't take into account 5 years ago. How has that changed the way you work?
So it's interesting. My husband and I were just having this conversation because when we were kids, everyone had a generator in their home, right? You would have your generator because there'd be these massive snowstorms and the power would go out and then the street would light up. But you don't see that. I'd say the last 4 or 5 years, that's not a priority for clients. So we're reworking, again, I hate to say I'm going back to the function, but my cottage, for example, we just had a drought and we have a well. So we started to say, okay, do we need a bigger cistern to hold water? Like the generator is not the new issue for the snowstorms. It's what can hold the water for droughts that we now experience. So I think for the actual, bones of the home, we are working really closely with contractors to say, yeah, what's coming in for these clients that they not only need something that looks really good, but is going to hold up 365 days of the year, regardless of what's going on. And then our role in that, beyond kind of the hard finish of the home, is mudrooms. Like we live in a climate where there's 4 seasons, right? The snow still comes, but then in the summer it's 30 degrees. So we're not building really like a picture perfect California mudroom. It has to hold up with boots full of ice and muck, but it also has to hold up in the summer when you're full of beach towels. So we're kind of walking through every piece of this home and saying, how do these weather events not only affect the structural components of the home, but how does this family live and create storage and function during all 4 seasons?
A major issue that has started coming up in these conversations that I have with creatives, not just across the US or North America, but across the world, really. The learning curve for what you do has expanded,
Mm.
and it almost feels daunting to me. And I'm not a designer. I'm not an architect. I don't work in that space, but I cover it, and it seems daunting to me, just the level of education and the things that you have to stay on top of, because a design education doesn't in no way, shape, or form prepares you for the real world application. It's kind of like in a vacuum in theory, right? And you learn important things, specifying digital tools, color theory, application. It's great, but the education that you have to undergo after you start your firm, how do you two sort of manage that? Do you put it on staff and it's kind of a learn up? Are you lifelong learners so that you learn it and then it's learned down or teach down? How do you approach that? And how do you stay on top of it? You talk about a Europe first. Are you going to Maison every year, every other year? Are you going to Salone every year, every other year? Budapest. How do you address all of the events that you can attend?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're both lifelong learners. I think that's kind of one quality that drew us to each other. And we both feel very comfortable being immersed in the design world. So while while it feels daunting, I guess, from the outside, it's also so much easier to learn about design nowadays because we can surround ourselves through social media, through Instagram, through Pinterest. We can see exactly what they're doing over in Portugal, in terms of how they're pulling a kitchen together. Like, what other time were you able to do that? So I feel like we're in the perfect time to be able to immerse ourselves, and we pick 2 to 3 shows a year that we're going to go and kind of study it. But also we just ensure that the whole team is involved in that. So this year we're actually sending 4 people on our design team to go to a show out in BC. Victoria and I went to Paris last year to Maison. Like, we definitely have that as a top priority. That continuous learning piece is always at the forefront. Again, especially in a market that is otherwise quite dated when it comes to design. Like, if we're not doing that, then we're just like everybody else. So we can't afford to not go spend the money actually, and to learn and to see what's happening in the rest of the world.
And I would say, the interesting thing about our team, there's 9 of us, and none of us come from an interior design background. In terms of, none of us are formally trained designers. Natalie came from sales. I came from logistics and transportation. We have a respiratory therapist, someone who worked at Anthropology. So I think, yes, the core skill set of immersing yourself in design is what it takes to be successful here. But the soft skills are so key in terms of, sure, you don't have the background, but that can be taught. But it's like, do you have a desire to learn? Do you have an appreciation for excellent customer service? Do you have resilience? Can you problem solve? So when we hire, yes, we're looking for someone who can pull a room together. Don't get me wrong. But going back to your original question, you're right. The real world is so much more than pulling a room together. The real world is beginning to end dealing with every single problem that lands on your plate. And those are the skills that we are, hiring for. And then as leaders in this business, we are then kind of taking them under our wings and bringing them up to speed on the design process.
You are listening to my conversation with Stil James. We'll be right back. If you've listened to the show for any amount of time, you've heard me say this, that the most important word in the design industry is service. Product is important, price is important, selection is important, but stellar service is the premier idea that can make all the difference in the success of a project, any project. How design professionals like you demand great service and your favorite brands in one place with expert, knowledgeable, and non-commission sales professionals. It's really important. It means that their only incentive is your satisfaction. Pacific Sales, Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company, has just that with over 60 years of experience in Southern California. Pacific Sales is your destination for exploration, advice, and inspiration. Now, you have the Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home team to help you and offer their Pro Rewards program, which is a trade program unlike any you have experienced before. Earn 3% in Best Buy gift cards, e-gift cards, or 2.5% in rewards checks for every qualified and delivered sale. In addition to special trade pricing, exclusive offers, access to exclusive special events, and so much more than I could possibly tell you about here. And the cherry on top is access to exclusive builder trade incentives from top brands and the stellar service, again, from a company that has been serving the industry for over 60 years. Terms and conditions apply to the Pro Rewards program and builder trade incentives. So visit a Pacific Sales expert at a showroom today for full details and to learn how you can unlock additional savings and benefits. Don't miss out on the opportunity to work with the best of the best. Visit Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home today and elevate your projects to new heights. The Design Hardware Showroom is a space where specifiers can go and find an incredible selection of high-end faucets, luxury tile, natural stone, wood floors, and bespoke hardware, and so much more. Select products are presented in a holistic manner, strategically arranged to stimulate creativity and transition your vision from the conceptual stage to a fully realized space. You will find everything you're looking for, even the products by brands you didn't know you didn't know. Surprise and delight. Am I right? All under one roof on 3rd Street in Los Angeles, just up the street from the Grove. Conveniently located, free parking available. Stop by to find inspiration, collect samples, get expert advice, and tackle everything on your specification list all in one place. Visit them online at designhardware.com, at Design Hardware and Flooring on the socials, or in the real world, 6053 West 3rd Street in Los Angeles. And that goes hand in glove with this other idea. You had mentioned that you're probably about 10 years off of peak trend.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair?
Yep. Mm-hmm. I know, it seems like a lot of years, doesn't it?
You know what's funny about that? Yeah. It seems like a lot of years now. Like 10 years ago seems forever ago to me.
Yeah.
5 years ago seems forever ago to me. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, it's funny because here in the US, I grew up in the San Fernando Valley in the 1980s. My wife grew up same time frame, but in Houston, Texas. And what was really interesting is we compare notes all the time because we'll share music with our kids and that kind of thing. And over the years, it's really become apparent that the difference between in the 1980s, 1990s, the difference between Los Angeles and Houston, Texas seemed to be about 5 or 6 years. That seemed like a consistent thing. Nowadays, you don't really have that anymore because of social media. Mm-hmm. But I feel like there is still that time-honored tradition of, even if you don't love it, you kind of honor what your parents did and kind of how you grew up. So I totally get it, that 10-year gap. At the same time, because certain things have changed, and I want to kind of weave in Lauren right now, kitchens, for example, right? 2016, 2017, Southern California. I remember on the show having conversations about a resurgence in sculleries, butler's pantries. Mm-hmm. And then the appliance companies started doing amazing things with columns for wine and coffee machines that took it from, coffee as a morning activity to coffee as an experience for the whole family, right? So the idea of kitchen, since then, cut to, 8, 9 years later, I don't know if I haven't spoken to any designers in years who still think about a kitchen as 3 appliances on a triangle without at least one secondary kitchen, be it a pantry, a scullery, a butler's pantry, a coffee bar, a wine bar, if you're in a recreationally approved state, a weed bar. These ideas seem to be converging across the entire United States. And I'm curious if you're seeing the same thing. And if so, was that the impetus for launching a cabinetry company?
So what's really interesting, I guess, going back to our market being dated 10 years, I mean, we have no showrooms. We don't even have a Crate and Barrel here. So our clients are just buying and doing typically what they've always done. And unless they're really design savvy or, just have a personal interest in design, they're just going to a local showroom or to a local shop, which is often selling, what people are buying. So it's kind of like input, output. On the millwork side, we were seeing that as well, where there were companies putting out quality millwork, but the gap was, it was not modern. It was not designer thinking. It was not meeting the needs of people who are going on Pinterest and saying, I want my kitchen to look like this, there was a big gap in the city of no company could really deliver that perfectly. And that is where we saw the opportunity for us to kind of jump in and say, there's lots of options in terms of furniture, even if we're not buying it locally. Sure, you can get furniture from Europe, from the US. You handle shipping, awesome, it's here. A kitchen's a different story. There needs to be someone locally that can bring that into your home. And I mean, it's a huge investment, right? So for us, we wanted to take it back and yeah, make something different, and give people what they're seeing online in the 4 Maritime provinces. And it's been a really exciting journey so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and COVID helped, like if there's anything that came out of COVID from a business standpoint, it's like our clients were sitting in their kitchens for 2 years straight and, incredibly frustrated with the lack of function or the fact that it always felt messy. So that actually gave us kind of a leg up to come out of COVID and launch the business and really hit the pain points of our clients who were well versed on everything that they did not like about their kitchens at that point.
4 Maritime provinces.
Mm-hmm.
What does that cover?
So we have Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, and Newfoundland.
And you have clients in all 4. That's your turf. That's your area. So
Yeah.
when you launched Lauren, am I pronouncing it right?
Loren.
Yeah.
Why didn't you tell me that the first time?
We laughed because people struggle to pronounce Stil James as well. And we're like, we just launched another business that no one can pronounce.
I don't know who's coming up with these names, but they should be fired.
Next thing you're going to tell me it was Stil James or something like that. Okay. Lauren,
yeah.
copy that. Okay. I find this interesting for a number of reasons. When you started the offshoot, when you start the millwork company, are you manufacturing in Nova Scotia?
So it's interesting. So going back to this lifelong learner concept, Natalie and I are big fans of the expert, and we often do calls with other designers who we kind of aspire to in different ways. So we actually had a call with Tanya from Unique Kitchens and Baths, and we had a call with Jean Stouffer as well, because they would be 2 big players in the American millwork market and are doing things that are a bit more design forward. And one thing that we took away from that model was we were in the process of looking to manufacture locally. And I guess for a number of reasons that fell through. And we had these calls, and we actually have now partnered with a manufacturer in Ontario, and they're able to do what they do best. And then we have exclusivity in the 4 Maritime provinces where our brand is selling, designing, distributing, handling shipping, install. So it's a really great marriage in the sense of, we're experts in our field and they're experts in their field. And it's this marriage of being able to bring that down here. Another really great outcome of this has been in Ontario. Custom is just way more common, right? In Toronto, there's many more custom homes than there are down here. So typically, if you were to go somewhere locally, they might say, well, we don't really do that, or we do that, and the price tag is really high. Working with somebody who has experience in all of these custom ins and outs, really nothing we need. I mean, we're bringing new ideas to them a lot of the time that they're saying, well, we've never seen this, but it's been great in a sense that we're putting really interesting kitchens into homes that we're both designing through Stil James and independently as well through the Loren brand.
So these are made in Ontario, manufactured in Ontario.
Yeah.
And your plan was is it to specify into your own projects exclusively, or is it to also build a network of other specifiers who will use the product in their designs?
So when we launched this, originally we wanted to kind of get our feet wet and really kind of hone that side of the business before we went out to market fully. So we kind of had the benefit of utilizing our own millwork company on all of our Stil James process. But the plan was always to let it fly as its own entity. It's a separate business altogether. But we got to cut our teeth on some of our own stuff first, which was great. And now we offer it to homeowners, and we are really tapping into other designers in the Maritime provinces, specifically because it is quite custom. So normally when you're working on a custom kitchen, there just is a designer in play. So, we have some really great relationships with designers here in Halifax and a couple over in Newfoundland and New Brunswick. And so that's kind of become the bread and butter for that side of the business.
And are you using your silly question, I'm sure, but you're using Canadian lumber?
Yes.
I'm fascinated by this for a number of reasons, not the least of which is I think you're definitely onto something. This idea that you can harness local industry to create and craft product on a regional basis so that you're avoiding the ridiculousness of international tariffs. You're avoiding the shipping congestion, supply chain congestion, and having some semblance of control again on something that is, if you're talking about representing 29% of a kitchen project and 33% of a bathroom project, you see the importance of that particular aspect. Now, is the goal to take Lorraine and expand it into other products, or to keep that millwork, case goods, cabinetry, and replicate it with other concepts for hardware, for example, or something of that nature?
Yeah, I mean, knowing Victoria and I would say, no, we've got it now. We're just going to stay here. Anytime we say like, yeah, we're good and we're actually just going to run this for a while, it seems like the next week we're like, I've got an idea. Let's do a tile line, or let's do a hardware line. This is this like endless chase for the entrepreneur of like, what's next and how do we build kind of the next arm out of Stil James. That sort of feeds us, I would say, as individuals and as business people. Vic and I very much came into this more with a business acumen, I think, than really a design brain, I guess. We came into this to see what we could build out, how we could differentiate. And I think we're always like, the sky is the limit. We look at other designers that have kind of built the empire, and there's something about that really excites us beyond just the design side of the business.
I wonder too, if it also helps you in other ways. I'm looking at the Lauren site, and I'm looking at your color palette. And it's funny because one of the things that bugs me to no end, and if you listen to the podcast, you know this, I complain about it incessantly, is we're entering the silly season where every website, every trade pub, every newsletter, here are the top 25 things you're going to see in design next year. Here are the top 10 things that you're never going to see in design again. And it's funny because I always say that, number one on both lists is always the white kitchen.
Always.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But especially color, because I think the shelter industry took from the fashion industry this idea of color palettes rotating on a seasonal basis. And it always seemed silly to me to even talk about it in design because if you're an architect, you're building something with a minimum 75-year lifespan, maximum. I mean, who knows? With modern materials, who knows how long your structures can remain relevant and functional. On the design side, I mean, when you do a new project, when you're completed with that project, in your mind, what is the lifespan of that creative work?
I mean, for me, I think we get this comment all the time, like from clients, which is, I want it to feel timeless. I want it to be timeless. Which is a really interesting comment because back to the white kitchen. I mean, everybody said that the white kitchen was timeless, but the reality is like, if a space is well designed, it doesn't really matter if it's white or off white or purple or whatever it is. There's just going to be longevity there versus a space that is not thoughtfully designed. That is why you hire a designer.
Totally
So,
get it.
right?
Absolutely true. But I'm gonna press you on it. When
Okay.
you finish a project
Hmm.
in your mind,
Hmm.
how long is that creative project relevant? What's its lifespan?
As a designer, I'm doing 10 to 15 years max as a
Okay.
designer.
Okay.
Yeah. As a
All right.
regular homeowner in a conservative market, maybe longer, maybe 20 years. I
I
don't
I
know.
think that, yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. I would say I had 10 years in my mind. I think where we design, and I mean, this isn't unique to us, but when you're picking hard finishes, something that has a little more staying power, right? That's going
Mhm.
to last that 10, 15-year mark. But you could pick a light fixture that's more trendy because if someone wants to switch that light fixture
Mhm.
out in 4 years, it's a much easier swap. It's much more cost effective thing to do. So we're always kind of playing this game, especially with clients in a conservative market who are always talking about things being timeless. Like timeless can fall boring, timeless can
Mhm.
fall flat. So if we have to push them out of their comfort zone a little bit, sure, like let's put in some lights, let's put in some stools in a kitchen, let's have fun with the things that you don't feel like you need to have a lifelong commitment to.
Mhm.
And I think that's totally fair. 25 years, sure. 10 years, sure. My point is, and I got started on this rant because I'm looking at your color palette further on. This idea that you're going to change your color of your home seasonally, if you're ordering cabinetry for a kitchen that represents 29, 30% of the cost of materials for the kitchen, and you're doing a deep harbor, your plan isn't to change that to Tidewater because next year lighter hues are going to be more popular. That's just not a realistic expectation. Can you change a sweater? Can you change a shirt? Yeah, absolutely. But what we're talking about, we don't change on a dime like that, which which means, and it was fun for me to look through your color palette because looking at the color palette tells me a lot about where you're from. If we
Mhm.
weren't talking about a maritime or nautical environment and I'm looking at Deep Harbor, Tidewater, Admiral's Blue, I'm getting the picture, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
I'm getting it. And I love that.
yeah.
But you also mentioned something, and I love this. You mentioned lighting. Think about 8 or 10 years ago, where you're trying to design a lighting plan for whatever space. And your options are so limited
Mhm.
because you're still working with incandescent lighting. Designers were not putting CFL bulbs into well-designed spaces because they didn't look good.
Mhm.
You just weren't doing it. But now, what you can do with LED has completely transformed the nature of design in so many ways because of what you can do with a lighting plan,
Mhm.
which is why I feel like, back to Loren and this idea of crafting a product partnership that really is regional in nature. And the four maritime provinces where there's and I love this, and I'm not being sarcastic at all. I love that there's this idea where you say, we're on a 10-year popularity gap, trend gap from major global cities, and we're okay with that. I think that's great. I would imagine clients feel the same way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's funny. We both grew up with fathers who are entrepreneurs. And the messaging I always got, because, everybody from here, when they kind of go through school, they wrestle with this, like, do we go to the big city? Do we go to Toronto? Do I go out west? Do I get there? And, my dad always said to me, like, be a big fish in a small pond. Like, that's what you want to do. Don't be a little fish in a big pond. That's a whole lot harder. It's a totally different game. Unless you have this real calling to be in a ginormous city. But for us, I think we've always used that to our advantage, where we want to bring something that feels bigger than what the market currently has or will have. And I think we've been able to do that, certainly within our design work. It feels different than sort of what's been happening to date. But also, we also respect that, like, we are here, we want to really play in our own backyard, and create like talking pieces for people. Like we strive for that. It sounds a little bit egotistical, but I know that I want neighbors to come into my clients' homes and go, whoa, like what is this? How did you guys come up with this? Like, that's a goal for us. And we're able to do that in this market, which is really fun. I don't think we'd be able to do that in Toronto.
I don't think it's egotistical. I think any creative endeavor requires a certain level of being able to shut out everything else and just do what you want to do. How does that work for you together? What's the yin and the yang? Where's your major conflict, and where do you feel like you two work the best together? Or do you completely separate roles? Oh, this is a good question. I can already tell by the response.
I mean, we don't, honestly, I know it's so good. It could be a gold mine. I'm telling you, we don't truly, we don't have a whole lot of conflict. And the reason for that is because we have very different skill sets. We were just extremely lucky that we found each other when we did, which was like 3 months postpartum, each of us on baby number 2. COVID was happening. I mean, literally how our partnership happened is I had started the business. Victoria was in New Brunswick, a province over, and she was working for her family business in shipping and logistics and also designing on the side. And I was working on her home here because she couldn't get here because of COVID. And then, that went really well. And as soon as she landed here, we went to coffee and I said, look, you're either going to be my competitor or you're going to be my partner. What do you want to do? And we were just both so tired that we were like, let's be partners.
I'm only working with half a brain and she's only working with half a brain
together. But really, we come from, Victoria is the engine that runs Stil James and Loren, and I am the one out. I'm with the people, if you will. I am meeting clients. I'm pulling in new business consistently. I do most of the hiring, and Victoria is like, the yin and the yang is like, she is right there with me on as soon as something comes in, we know exactly what the play is. And I think both of us have this, tenacity for perfection in our own lanes, but enough respect for the other person that I don't need to go into her lane and tell her how to set up an Excel document. That wouldn't go well. And she doesn't need to come over to me and tell me how to deal with a client issue, and nor does she want to. And that's the beauty, I think, of our partnership. And I always say this, which I think is really interesting, because my husband started his business at 18. He was really young. He was in the security industry. And the way you approach business and the way you approach people when you're in your 20s and before families, when I look back at him, kind of running around like a chicken with his head cut off, and when I look at when we started our business with established families, we're 5 years into our marriages, there's a different approach there. There is this, there's really not a lot of time to mess around with things that are unimportant and activities that aren't high payoff activities. There's no luxury there of time because you're with your family. And so if you're going to focus in, you're focusing in on what's going to be the best thing for the company in terms of making money and what the best thing is for the clients. There's no other time surrounding that.
Yeah, I would say our partnership is a bit like a Venn diagram. So it's like Nat stays in her lane when it's decisions that affect her. Like she's the expert, she's honed in on that side of the business. And I'm going to trust her enough to run with that and be making the right decisions. Same on my piece. When there's a little overlap in the sliver, I would say, 9 times out of 10, we're fortunate enough that I think we do see eye to eye. And if there's something we disagree on, it's really funny. I forget what it was. I was laughing about this the other day. We disagreed on something and, we both, I think we're just like, okay, well, let's just take a breath and see where we land and we can talk about it after. And then within 48 hours, Nat emails me and she was like, you know what, I'm thinking about it. It's fine. Let's just do it your way. So yeah. I think we both, going back to that maturity, we can butt heads, but then kind of come back together with a very mature outlook where, is this really important? And if she thinks it's more important than me, I'll be the one to kind of wave the white flag and vice versa.
How do you plan growth and development? When you mentioned that you don't have a large number of resources within the design community, I'm thinking it through, just finding new product to specify, finding new ideas, social media is great once you accept the fact that 99% of it's crap. And there's maybe 1% that nugget that you have to sift through to find. But I also imagine you don't have a lot of product reps coming through. What is discovery of new product like for you? What is your, how do you build relationships with local showrooms or regional showrooms so that, because there's a perk that comes from having great relationships, industry relationships. Maybe you get your products a little faster. Maybe their trade programs a little bit better. Maybe, who knows? How do you deal with the fact that, arguably you have fewer resources from which to draw?
It always starts with the people side of it for me. And this is a beautiful mirroring of the two sides of what we do is it's such a good lesson to understand. There's a ton of stuff out there that we could buy. Product is endless. And yes, there's some stuff that shows up and it's junk and you learn that the hard way and everybody goes through that. But because there are fewer sort of suppliers, we're able to cut deep with those suppliers, which requires us to have meaningful, important, mutually beneficial relationships, always. And it's like anything. It's like going into a marriage or a friendship, or it's like any partnership. We know out of the gate, if this group can really meet us, halfway and feels that same mutual respect for us, we know we're going to be, it doesn't really matter. We're going to make it happen. We're going to foster the relationship. Kravet's a great example for us. We use a ton of Kravet fabric, wallpaper. They're really great on service. They are constantly innovating, their offering. They're constantly communicating that innovation. We've gone on trips with them. We've hosted them here in Halifax. We really enjoy that relationship with them. Those are the type of suppliers that we want to work with, and so I start there. And then Victoria comes in and she figures how we're going to execute that. Do we need our own warehouse to, ship things in and hold inventory? What does that piece look like? And so sort of those two sides coming together allow us to have really strong partnerships with fewer, and it's worked.
And I would say on the back end of that, because I'm seeing really from procurement, ordering to install, someone can talk big talk and the product can be good, but if they are a nightmare when it comes to, we need, like, if there's no push and pull, it goes back to that, like Nat said, it's a partnership. It's not, we are your customer and, I'll get to you when I get to you. We have dropped suppliers for that same reason, because we are so remote. If stuff is showing up damaged, we can't just take it down the street and swap it out. So we are super reliant on the customer service piece of what these vendors and manufacturers can offer to us, because we need quick solutions for our clients. We need easy returns. We need easy replacements. And they need to come to the table with these ideas, because if they're just like, well, you bought it, hands off, like that's a no-go for us.
And on our end, like the expectation is we're kind. Like when we're dealing with stuff, there's always problems in the design world. There's always stuff that shows up, broken or the wrong color or whatever it is. Our team is required in those moments of stress to be kind, because that's what our suppliers deserve back from us. And I think that's also overlooked in our industry, is like that goes a really long way. When I can pick up the phone and say, hey, you shipped me 25 yards of the wrong fabric. Do you think we could get that sorted out today? And they're like, oh, geez, sorry, Natalie. That yes, we'll get that sorted right away. That goes way further than me picking up the phone, screaming at some poor customer service person, right? So it's important on both sides.
It's so true. It's so true. It's funny because I have this one particular instance that I always love to share with designers, because as I go through the story, I always wind up getting the eye roll and then the nod. And then when we first moved from LA to Tulsa, we went from this 1,264 square foot beach house to a 3,600 square foot house in Tulsa just as the kids were going off to college, which made no sense at all. But for the basement, we ordered this black leather club chair during the pandemic. So they were like, well, it's going to be 16 weeks before you can get it. Fine, as long as we can get it. What I didn't realize was, because we were in Tulsa, like I was always used to being in Los Angeles, getting things shipped direct. And when it got there, it was in the original packaging because it came direct from the factory. But in Tulsa, it went from factory to receiver to mid-mover, secondary receiver, last mile white glove delivery. Mm. By the time the black leather chair got to us, it was out of the original packaging. And I'm sure the secondary packaging was really nice in a blanket, but by the time it got to us,
there was a cat sitting in it.
It was what?
There was a cat sitting in it.
Oh my gosh. Close. Yeah. There was bubble wrap that someone had taken and thought it would be a good idea to attach the packing tape directly to the leather.
Awesome.
as they wrapped it in bubble wrap.
Peel and stick chair.
That's exactly what it was. So by the time it got here, white glove delivery, right? So they bring it in and it looks, it's bubble wrapped with a moving blanket. It is packed. And then as they take the blanket off, and then the moving guys thought they'd be great with their efficiency. So they're ripping it off. And then they got to the tape. And instead of realizing that it was taped to the chair and maybe trying to do something, they just ripped it off. So what does packing tape look like? It's a 2.5, 3-inch strip, probably a 4-inch. And to this day, this is 3 years ago, the packing strip tape. Now it's patinaed nicely.
That's positive.
But I remember going through it with receiver number 1, local shipper number 1, receiver number 2, local shipper mid shipper number 2, factory. It was a complete pain. And what most clients don't realize, or homeowners don't realize if they've never worked with a really good designer, is you don't see any of that because the designer handles it.
Totally.
There's a skill there. And to not be an asshole while you're doing it, but to be someone who's like, you know what, we have a no a-hole policy. Like, just be nice, be kind, because the people you're talking to want to get it to you in one piece too.
Absolutely.
Nobody's trying to send out something with packing tape, tearing off the first 10 layers of leather. Nobody's trying to do that.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes that's forgotten.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not so much in Canada.
Probably
Where,
less here, and specifically in the Maritimes, I will say, like, that is true. Like, Maritimers are, I would say, genuinely like very friendly people. But there's always assholes. I mean, there's assholes everywhere, and we've had them as clients and we've had them as suppliers, and it's our job to make sure that we're not entering into a relationship with them, because the reality is there's just no winning there.
And I think a big piece of value that we really try and push upon our clients, because every designer has this struggle when a client sees something a little bit cheaper somewhere else, or can I just buy this myself? And we always bring it back to the relationship, because what you just walked through, it's like you as a homeowner can go buy that, and hopefully they listen to this podcast and hear all your pain points.
Yeah.
Because if we buy it, like, you're not paying above market. Maybe you found something on sale, and we can't honor the sale price, but paying a retail price for something and getting that relationship problem solving component baked in, like, there's endless value in that.
yeah, totally agree with that. Last question I have for you, just out of curiosity, was Halifax a beneficiary of net plus migration into Halifax during the pandemic, or was it more inflow or outflow?
Primarily inflow.
Inflow.
Mhm.
Have those individuals, what we're starting to see in a number of American cities, Nashville, Austin, LA, where that people flooded into, where there was a plus migration,
Yeah.
have started to go back out. They've started to have people started to go home, or is it still a growing community?
I think primarily people actually were coming back home during COVID. So a lot of people who left to go to Toronto or out west, during COVID, I think they really missed the ocean and maybe a slower way of life, or started to have families and were coming back home to be closer to mom and dad. I mean, we see that a lot in our client base, as people that are selling their, home in Toronto or their tiny little apartment box for $1.5 million or $2 million, and they come home and they can buy this big, beautiful, 3,500 square foot home with a yard on a lake.
Yeah. And I think remote work has enabled a large portion of them to stay, because the issue in Halifax is there's not really head offices. So again, you go to Toronto and there's head office and there's a ton of growth opportunity. But with the general corporate workforce easing off on that, you can still maintain your job from, for a Toronto headquarters here in Halifax. And sure, maybe you have to travel there 4 or 6 times a year, but for the quality of life, that's, something that's really doable for people.
And I ask that because you happen to be in an incredibly safe community, a beautiful community, seaside community, and because of that, it's desirable, and people would want to live there if they could manage their work lives as well. Has that changed your design, the actual scope of work? In that, are you putting in more quiet rooms? Are you putting in more home offices? Are you adding to that? And does Loren sort of fit into that part of it as well?
So it's interesting. We have seen an influx of requests through Loren specifically for Murphy beds, because I think people are using these kind of double duty spaces where it's a home office, 50 weeks of the year. And for the 2 weeks you have guests, you can pull a Murphy bed out, because people are trying to create these kind of cross functional spaces. So I would say that's definitely happening in Halifax in particular. our bread and butter is renovating. If you want to be outside of the city, there's land to build. But for anybody who wants to be in the city, you're renovating, typically an older home that maybe isn't set up with a really modern functional floor plan. So part of what we really do, and I know Nat touched on this earlier, is rethinking these floor plans for the way your family lives today. And I would say home offices and more, I think a lot of design magazines talk about this right now, moving from like the open floor plan that's dominated the last 10 years to a more closed off floor plan. That trend is definitely here. People want their space and to be able to close a door or have, a den for the kids, and the adults can sit and have dinner. So we're certainly seeing that.
I love that. This was so much fun. This was awesome. For those listening, per usual, go to the show notes where you can find links to Stil James as well as Loren. Stil James, what's the backstory?
So Stil, I studied over in Norway for a little while, and Stil is the Danish word for style. And James, when I started the company, I had just had my first daughter, George James. So that's where Stil James came from. And then
we started Loren, and Loren is my first daughter's middle name. So both companies are named after our daughters, who I think, as cheesy as it sounds, I think our kids do give us a big piece of showing up here every day. I mean, we are like huge proponents of females in business and being very real about that. And, you see kind of, I think, there's the whole like girl boss, I can do anything, I can do no wrong. But it's like, we are very happy to share all the challenges and struggles.
I have a child under this desk right now, Josh, is what's happening. She's been tugging on my skirt for the last 50 minutes. I'm excited to get off of here. No, but it's true. We are.
I will take that as a compliment.
Yeah, no, it's true. We're really proud of that. And we want our daughters to see that they can do whatever they want. And, that's something that's really important to us. So we wanted to honor them in both names of the company.
All right. Well, now knowing that there's a small kid under the desk, I'm sorry I said a bad word.
Okay. It's okay. They've heard it before.
Oh, this was great. This was so much fun. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That was a lot of fun. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you, Natalie and Victoria, for taking the time to speak with me and sharing your insight. Thank you for listening. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend or colleague who loves design and architecture just like you do. Subscribe to Convo by Design wherever you get your favorite podcasts, and continue the conversation on Instagram at Convo by Design with an X. Please keep those emails coming with guest suggestions, show ideas, and locations where you'd like to see us broadcasting from. Convo by Design at Outlook.com. Thank you to my partner sponsors, TimberTech, the AZEK Company, Pacific Sales, Best Buy, and Design Hardware for supporting the publication of over 650 episodes over the past 13 years. It's what makes Convo by Design the longest running podcast of our kind. Downloads and streams and all of the content that you get from us, it's thanks to them because they make it possible. So listen, these companies support the shelter industry, so please give them an opportunity on your next project. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, be well, stay focused, and rise above the chaos.